Thanks all for coming. We'll start with apologies for absence. We've got apologies from Councillor Eddy, Councillor Ali and Councillor Kumar. Is that?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, next, emergency evacuation procedures. Steve, would you?
Yeah, there's none scheduled today. If something does happen, then we'll just take the nearest exit and follow the first person out, I would suggest.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest, does anybody need to make any? No. Public access, we've none received?
None received.
So move on to Chair's business. So I welcome everyone to the meeting. The committee meeting is taking place here at the headquarters in Portishead, and we're recording the meeting for the public to watch on the Fire Authority's YouTube channel. So I'll ask members to introduce themselves. So my name is Robert Payne, I'm the chair of this committee and I'm councillor for Weston-super-Mare Central and the Somerset Council.
Good morning, I'm Adam Monk, I represent Filton on South Gloss.
Don Davis, North Somerset Council, Pill Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Ben Nutlin, South Gloucestershire Council, Yate North Ward.
Thank you very much. And now I'll ask the officers to introduce themselves. We'll go around this way.
Yeah, good morning, Steve Imrie, one of the Assistant Chiefs for Avon Fire.
Morning, Claire Bentley, Head of Finance.
Good morning, I'm Zoe Baker-Powell from the Transformation Team.
Good morning, Pete Davis. I'm the Services Liaison Officer with HMIC FRS.
And good morning, I'm Simon Flood. I'm the Performance Manager for Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Good morning, Dan McCarthy, Station Manager of Risk Management Projects.
Good morning, Amanda Brown, Services.
Good morning, Amanda Brown, Clerk to Avon Fire Authority.
Right, thank you very much. If I could remind everyone to use their microphones when speaking, just to help with the recording, and turn them off when you're not speaking. Any votes that take place, I'll ask members for a show of hands. I'll take votes against, abstentions and votes for. And I'd just like to say a special thanks to Councillor Don Davis, who is leaving the Fire Authority, and this will be his last committee meeting. We value all your input you've had, and we will miss you, I think. I am aware, of course, of the proposed new committee structure which the Fire Authority will be considering next week. So it's quite possible that we will be disbanding this committee altogether, so it could be the last one. I don't want to preempt what the Fire Authority is going to do, but if in the event that it does go ahead like that, then I'd like to thank all of the members for their input into this committee over the time it's stood. Right. So we move on to the minutes of the last meeting, the 18th of January. I'm happy to move that they're a correct record of the meeting. Has anybody got any?
Are you seconded?
Yeah. Okay. All in favour? Yeah. Okay. And we move on to item 7, the performance report. Simon Flood.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning again, councillors and colleagues. So, as usual, what we're looking at is the performance report. We're looking at the period for the first 11 months of the previous financial year. So the information in front of you is from April to February 2022-23. As usual, it's supported by 2 appendices. The first one is the scorecard, which lists all of the corporate indicators that we measure at Avon, linked into our 6 of our 7 key objectives are prevention, protection, response, resilience, improve our service, investing our staff. And the second one, Appendix 2, is most of the same information, just in a more easy to read tabular type or graph type format, and we produce these at Avon level and also for each station, which is then sent out to the stations and to members as the champions of those stations. We use a very simple red, amber, green mechanism for measuring the performance. So it shows green if it's on target, amber if it is near to target, and red if it is concerned and off target. And what we try and highlight more at the meetings is the areas where we're off target and what we're doing to try and mitigate and can rectify that to get us back to the targets. If you look at the scorecard, most of the indicators on there are showing green, so it is quite a reasonably good set of results. And the indications that we have so far is this is replicating is pretty much what we're going to be seeing at the end of the financial year. And at the next meeting of this committee or its possible successors, we'll be presenting to you the performance reports which we produce annually, which gives the same information with a number of infographics and things to try and make it readable and engaging for the communities that we serve. But it's a reasonable assumption, I think, after 11 months, this is pretty much where we're going to have ended up at the end of the year. So looking at the individual areas, under prevention, 2 of the 4 indicators are on target, and the accidental dwelling fires is just off target by 2 incidents and is showing amber. I don't think there are any real causes for concern there. The one that is off target, as we've talked about since, is the deliberate secondary fires. So those are fires that we suspect have been set light deliberately rather than accidentally, and a secondary fire is roughly something that isn't a building or a vehicle. There are other little intricacies of it, but that's roughly that. And if you look on the target tracker, the bottom left graph is the information about that. And you can see the main reason that we're off target is the increase in numbers in July and the large increase in numbers in August when we had the exceptionally dry weather. And having exceptionally dry conditions does mean that there's potentially more opportunity for things to catch light, so we had increases in those 2 months, which has kept us off target. Okay. The home fire safety visits is one of the other things on the scorecard that is currently showing. It is now showing as amber, and we're within 90% of where we wanted to be. We're gradually improving and gradually getting back to the volumes that we have previously been achieving of those, and we have a plan to gradually increase the numbers that we're completing. And we've got some information about the targets that we're looking to set for next year, the differences from this year, which is in paragraph 6.1 of the report, which we'll come to when we get to that. But we are improving. And every visit we do is obviously reducing risk in the community, so they're valuable things to do. Looking at protection, the target for reducing malicious alarms and call challenge nodes has been met, and we're also just slightly off target with the target about attending at false alarms. The processing building regulations and licensing applications are both just off target, but we are improving. And the last 2 months we've met target for 100% of the applications that we've received. So it's something that we struggled with a little bit at the start of the year due to some reduced staff numbers, but now we're achieving, and going forward that's looking quite promising. The response indicators, all of them are on target, which is excellent news. We're also meeting the target about answering the 999 calls, which is also good news. And you can see there that we've got information about the volumes of calls that we've received and the number of incidents that we've attended. Now, we obviously don't set targets for those because we're still very much a case of if people have any doubt about, they need to phone the fire service to give us a call, and then we'll attend if appropriate. So we don't set a target to reduce the number of 999 calls that we receive, but we try and make sure that we provide information so people know when it's appropriate to phone fire service and when it isn't, what we can do and what we can't do. Moving on then to the resilience section, which is one of the other parts of the performance information when we're off target, and looking at what we currently measure on there, which is about shifts and days lost to sickness for our workforce. And you can see from the scorecard that the 3 measures that we're recording are off target. We started the year with a target which was the same as the previous year of losing no more than 8.11 shifts or days roughly per person, but per full-time equivalence of a person. And at the time of this report for all staff, we were up to 10.17. So we're missing target, and there's now no chance of us actually meeting that target. COVID-19 related sickness still accounts for some of the sickness that we've reported, but if we were to take that out, then we're still off target, but it does have some implications of that. Paragraph 510 talks about what we're looking to do to try and achieve target for next year. So at the service leadership team, which is meeting Wednesday of next week, we've got the afternoon session as a service. We're going to sit down and try and plan out our new attendance management policy to get that published, but also look at the mitigations and the things that we're going to do internally to try and improve our sickness. And then we'll report back to members once we've decided out about what actions we're going to be able to make. Under improving our service, you can see that the revenue budget is on target with the variance at 0% compared to what we're looking to achieve, which is good. And under the investing our staff, the main indicator there is about the personal development reviews, the PDRs, which is our staff appraisal system. At the last meeting, we were pleased to report that we were on target. We've slipped a little bit, unfortunately, and we're now meeting 93% in date. The main problem we have is, and I think we've talked about this before, is the system we have for recording these is a legacy system written by our previous IT provider, but we have now procured a change to that. So the legacy system means that we're in a little bit of a hybrid at the moment of some of our appraisals are done using that system and some are being maintained clerically on paper, which means that the monitoring of them isn't as easy as we would like. So we're hopeful that the purchase of the new software and the introduction of the new system will mean that we'll be able to report it all in a digital format. So we're looking then that the completion rate will improve, which will be good news. So that's all I wanted to say about the indicators themselves, but if I could just briefly talk about the metrics for next year, and then I'll open to members for any questions. So most of the metrics, we are keeping the same methodology or the same target as the previous years. The ones that are changing are highlighted in paragraph 6.1, and you can see there that we've increasing the number of educational packages that we're looking to deliver, and that's going from 500 to 600, and we're also increasing the number of home fire safety visits that we're looking to achieve from 5,000 to 6,000. And our Head of Prevention and Protection, Area Manager Steve Quinton, has a plan in place to make sure that we're going to be able to achieve that. And the consultation about that was included in the service plan that has been approved, or the refresh of the service plan for this year. We're also looking at changing our target for building regulations processing target and licensing processing target, and the previous target for those was 98%, which we've looked at with some detail and we don't think is realistic based upon the number that we're actually getting of those. So with some of them, the volume we're getting is just over 100, so having a 98% target means there's very little scope for not achieving them, takes you into the red. So we have set and agreed a target for each of those of having 90% to be done or processed within target, which we think is a lot more achievable and realistic, which is one of our goals when we're setting the targets. And the last one on there is that we've increased the target for completing audits in high-risk premises to 700. So again, it's kind of saying with the additional resourcing we're putting into our protection teams, raising the target as appropriate for them. I said about that the sickness target hadn't been agreed at the time this paper had to be produced. It has now been agreed, and what we've decided is that we're going to set the same target as we had for the last 2 years. So we're looking to lose no more than 8.11 shifts or days per full-time equivalent, and that will roughly take us in line with about the average of other fire and rescue services. So that's the target we set for this current year. And the last thing to report is one of our key objectives is about the transformation team, which Zoe is representing today. At the moment, we haven't had a metric for that measure, but we are working on a new metric, which we should be able to report at the next meeting, and hopefully will be agreed at the service leadership team next week, which will be just looking at the actions and objectives that we've got and just measuring the percentage of those that have been achieved within the target or the time schedule that we set ourselves to achieve them. So hopefully at the next meeting we'll be including that into the information that's provided to members. Okay, so that's really all I wanted to say from this, and so what we're looking for is to members to discuss and approve the report, and also to note and approve the scorecard metrics that we're setting for this current financial year. So, can I offer, are there any questions?
Okay, thank you very much, Simon. Tom, yeah.
Well, thank you, Simon, to you and indeed your team and the service for producing these set of statistics, very comprehensive. So thank you for that. I guess, Robert's already intimated this could well be the last meeting of this committee, and we're into a new structure potentially with the constitution being revised. I guess if I'm a new member, which I won't be in May, and I'm on this committee, or its replacement, I'm looking at these statistics, I probably want to ask 3 questions. First of all is, what level of scrutiny is there by members of the setting of the targets? So these are hopefully objective questions. They aren't criticisms, Simon. So how hard or how challenging are actually the target numbers? For example, if we said we're going to do it in 90%, but every other service is doing it in 99%, then actually it's not very challenging, but equally could be the other way around. So, what level is there relatively speaking, and what level is there absolutely? So are we setting ourselves up to fail? In other words, if we put a target of 99%, the chances of ever achieving it because of the circumstances is probably very small. So that people just get fed up and don't worry about it because they know they're never going to achieve it. So I think we need to have some understanding of how the targets are set. I guess the other question is, the second question is around statistics, because, I'm sure we've had experience of working in places with targets. Clearly the fire service is one, but in business another. But the targets set behaviour, don't they? So if you've got a target of doing 90% of something and you get to 91, I think we've met our target. I'm not going to bother too much about the rest, because actually, why should I? I'm not getting paid anymore to bother anymore. I'm going to achieve what I should be achieving. So I suppose statistically I'd like to know what happens to, say, the 10% of when the 90% has been done. So in other words, if the response time, let's say response time we set as a target of 8 minutes, and 90% we achieve in 8 minutes, the other 10%, if looking at those, the spread is down to about 3 hours. So once we've gone past the 8-hour target, we don't actually bother too much. Do you know what I mean? So I think the statistics, we need to understand what's happening in the bit we've missed. So in other words, is there a problem in the way the target has been missed? And I suppose the other one, and I found in working in logistics over many years, that quite often having too many targets makes things difficult. What I like to be able to go out and say is, look, we've got 3 targets today. Have we achieved what we said we were going to do yesterday? Are we going to manage to do what we said we're going to do today? And how are we actually getting on currently in terms of meeting that? So it's all the history, the future, and now. So I do wonder, from a layperson's point of view, is what would we say were our 2, 3, 4, 5 most important statistics? Because I think in terms of our remit out into the wider world, we can look at these statistics, and we know, and we have done, and this is really important stuff. But equally, if you're a member of the public and say, you're living in Downend and you're interested in the fire service, you may be keen enough to plough for this. But what you're probably quite keen to know is what are the top 5 things they said they're going to do, and are they doing them? I'm not saying 5 should be. It could be 3, it could be 8, it could be 10, it could be 2. But what in terms of headline numbers? And I know we do that one we use, like, it costs us 10 pence a day for your service, and that's a real good value for money, which we know it is. But that's kind of something that sticks in people's minds. And we have that scorecard thing, which is like a 1-page, which has still got a lot of information. So I do wonder whether we need to go beyond this into the wider world. I've gone on for a long time, so I'm going to shut up now.
Yes, I mean, it's always a fine line between measuring too much, and I've certainly worked in other organisations and other fire and rescue services who have a similar document that goes to their scrutiny committees, where there'll be far more information that's provided. And I suppose if we're thinking of our key 3 things, prevention, response are the key 3 things. One of the things that we do internally with this to try and focus at our leadership team is looking at the prevention, protection, response, resilience, improved service, investing in our staff, and also creating a sort of a matrix to saying, of our performance indicators that under those, which of those 7 areas are the ones that are presenting the biggest risk to us. And then there's other information that really ought to be feeding into those with regard to things like audits and all sorts of other things that you would, and corporate risks and things match against those. So whether then what you'd be looking for would be something to say, protection, prevention, response, are we on target for those three things? And then underlying there is a number of things that would feed into that with an algorithm type thing that would create an overall score for them. On your first point about the level of scrutiny and the targets, I mean, certainly we could provide a lot more information with regard how we internally set the targets. But again, it's trying to judge the level of scrutiny the committee will want from that. So we can certainly do that, because internally we look at benchmarking where we can with other fire and rescue services, which isn't as easy as it used to be, because there used to be a set of best value performance indicators that applied to every fire and rescue service. So it was easy to compare. There are now no national indicators for fire and rescue service. So to a large extent, fire and rescue services create their own indicators, and if they're not exactly the same, you can't benchmark. But where we can, we have kept, for those who want to, measuring the same things. So we can measure the benchmarking of the sickness, and we use that information quite extensively. And some of the incident indicators we can certainly measure. Taking your point now about the protection world, with things like processing of licensing applications, I'm not sure if there's benchmarking figures about that, but it's certainly something we could investigate and just make sure that we are not completely out of kilter with the rest of the fire and rescue services. So yes, we can certainly look at that, because there are a number of information sharing sites through the National Fire Chiefs Council that allow you to quite easily share that sort of information. So it's something we could certainly look at. And we do try and always make sure the targets are achievable and realistic, because I think it's similar to the first 2 years of the COVID pandemic. If we'd have kept the COVID figures in our sickness, the sickness levels would have been higher, but we'd have always just said it's because of COVID, and you wouldn't have looked any further than that. So we deliberately reported the COVID figures separately to avoid skewing it. Now, we know there was probably some skewing, particularly at the start of the COVID pandemic, when you couldn't test. So you may have had COVID, you may have just been having a cold. So there was some bleed between the two. So I hope that answers your queries.
Can I just add one thing? Because the question appeared to be more about what members and the public would like to see, what their priorities would be. And I suppose as part of this governance review, we're going to be working with members on a member officer protocol. And I think that's when we need to have conversations about what you as elected members think the public want and what you want reported. So I think it's a two-way thing. We need a bit more feedback about that so we can get it right for you. Yeah, of course.
The other question was about the statistics of this, about the bits where we don't meet the target. Now, I know, if it's a normal distribution, how many standard deviations would you expect it to be? Would you expect it all within sort of 2? Because that will give you an indication the numbers aren't too bad. But if it's a real long tail of data, then that should be a worry to us as a fire authority, because we need to then take steps to ensure that 10% which aren't being met on time, have some level of response which is acceptable.
So, yeah, I mean, your question, sorry, I didn't answer that bit about the response. I mean, certainly we are not, I suppose you could say, commercially minded, if you're thinking of commercially minded in a bad way. If we were meeting our 8 minutes response thing, we would just say, we're not going to bother going to that one. So we go to whatever we can as soon as we can. But to a certain extent, the 8 minutes and the averages, there are parts of Avon that with the deployment of the resources that we have, that is not feasible to get to within 8 minutes, hence it's an average figure. But certainly we monitor all the response. The system we have for our command and control looks at the anticipated time to get to a location, and we measure that against the actual time, and there's significant differences in those. Then we investigated as to why. And we also have some software that looks at our incident indicators, and rather than, if you think of it as an artificial thing of looking at one financial year to the other, it looks at a longer term trend and looks at the standard deviation and tries to identify whether it's a significant change or a non-significant change, if you like. So we have that underpinning it, but to a certain extent, when you're reporting one financial year to another financial year, as we currently do, and as government tends to do, it's difficult sometimes. You lose that significance of the longer period.
Right, any other questions from members? Right, so do we need to
I think
approve?
because it says approve as
approve
well
the
as that, I
matrix-
think
the
if we
matrix.
propose and second.
Okay, so I'll propose that we approve the report and the metrics. Yes?
Yes.
Seconded by Adam.
Adam.
Anyone against? Any abstentions? Everyone in favour? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Simon. Right, next item is the transformation programme update. And Zoe.
Thank you, Chair. Members, just to let you know that the area manager that has previously been on secondment for the industrial action will be returning to the team at the beginning of May. We have continued our search to find some digital resource to no avail. So we are now exploring another few avenues to see if that brings us some success. So some of that includes contracting out to our IT provider, talking to our partners, and along with a possible internal solution. So we're confident that we will have some digital expertise in the near future. However, it has impacted our ability to with our direction of travel and the pace of which we are delivering the programme. So I think it's unlikely that all the digital aspects of the programme will be delivered within the remainder of the programme. So some of that work will need to carry on beyond the end of the programme. So just to highlight a couple of the key achievements that we've achieved in the last period. The most significant, I think, has been the upgrade to the Firewatch system. That's been a system that's been out of date for some years, and now we have the new version. It enables us to move ahead with many projects that will bring us up to where we need to be. So it'll still take quite a while for some of those projects to be embedded, but that is a rather significant piece of work. And already the users of Firewatch have noticed about an 80% improvement in performance. So that's good. So that went live in February. And the other most notable piece of work that we've done, one that we're very proud of, is the Dignity and Respect Toolkit that accompanies the policy. So that has been very well received. We've been looking at the analytics for that. We've had hundreds of people looking at the toolkit, which is actually quite unprecedented for the service. So we're particularly proud of that. And I think particularly proud of the way that the work was done. So the collaboration between the transformation team and the subject matter experts was particularly effective. So that's gone particularly well. So the only other area that I would like to draw your attention to is just how we're doing against our progress. I was planning to show you an extract from our project register and our new dashboard, but I think because of the sound implications, it might be difficult to achieve that. So I'm happy to send that to you afterwards. So we've got 38 work packages remaining, 18 of which are on track. 7 are they're sort of slightly off track, so we're just experiencing a few issues. 4 have been completed, 4 are in evaluation, just 2 have not started. We've got a couple on hold, and that's related to Firewatch, so they can't start until some of the Firewatch work has been completed. So that's where we're looking at. So I think it's quite a healthy position. I think the majority of those work packages are more than likely to complete within the programme. I think it's just some of the digital aspects that probably might need to carry on further than that. So we're in pretty good shape. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Zoe. Yeah, all looks pretty positive on the whole, apart from the problem filling vacancies. I think Adam first.
So, thank you. So it does seem to be fairly healthily on track. and I recognise the issue around the 365 trainer and the digital developer. Will that have a financial impact on the delivery? So my question is does this mean we're now going to go over budget in terms of the delivery?
I don't think so, because we'd budgeted to have those resources over, I think, a 2 or 3 year period, and because we've not been able to fill that, we've actually, made a saving in some way. So we're able to reinvest that into the work that we're doing elsewhere. And the work that we are looking to outsource is already included within our IT contract, so there won't be an additional cost. I think we've got something like 20 development days a month. Sorry, 20 development hours a month. So we're looking to incorporate that for transformation work. So no, we're well within budget at the moment, no problem. No concerns there whatsoever.
Okay, Ben.
Cheers, thank you. Thanks, Zoe, for such a concise report. It does kind of feel like Groundhog Day again, where we can't fill vacancies within our transformation programme. And it always seems to go back to the ability to offer a salary that's competitive with the private sector, which is not just with the firefighting, it's the same across many public organisations. The more we keep coming back to this, I'm just wondering if there is the ability for us to maybe use some of our outside contract work to try and fill parts of, the vacancies that we are looking at to fill, maybe parts of those responsibilities, maybe using outsourcing a little bit more. I don't know if the budget is there for us to do that. It just seems we just keep coming back to the situation whereby we can't go over a certain level, which then puts us back in to try and recruit, and then find out that actually when we've tried to recruit someone, they've usually been poached by the private sector. I'm just wondering if outsourcing might become more feasible to fill, at least fill part of the package than to keep going around the circle all the time. Could you sort of expand on that?
I think in recognition of that, the new IT contract that became into effect in the beginning of April, I think that's why they incorporated these development hours within the contract, because we could foresee that this was something that was going to continue. So yes, we've already got a number of pieces of work lined up for them to do. So I think that will continue certainly for the life of the contract. I'm not quite sure how long the contract is. Is it 4 or 5 years?
Yes.
Yeah. So I know that there is. She says with confidence. I know that that's the case, and we are exploring some internal options whereby if we can upskill people who already work for us, then I think that would be a good thing. So we've got some ideas of how we might do that, which we're exploring. So I'm sure we'll be able to come back to you in the near future to give you some more promising news on that. But I think we try not to outsource too much because it is incredibly expensive, as you know. So I think using the Aura contract through their development arm is probably the most cost-effective way of doing it for now. But we do have a longer-term plan. I think there's just a shortage of skills, actually, which I find quite surprising. But I think we just can't compete with private sector, unfortunately. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Yeah.
You've sort of hit the nail on the head whereby actually we can't fulfill some of these transformation projects because we can't actually compete with those outside in the private sector. So as much as we need to make sure that we're protecting the taxpayer in terms of the money that we're spending, actually in terms of our transformation as a service going forward, which many of these things that we can't actually fulfill are actually required to get us up to that next stage. We have a contract in place. Do you think we might be able to look at sending more work out if we can't actually get to a stage where we are using our internal resources?
I think that will be one of the options that will be considered, absolutely. I think there's a lot of conversation going on at the moment about what happens post-transformation. So the programme comes to an end in March 24. So the conversations, throughout this remaining year is what does it look like afterwards? So it needs to become much more of a sort of sustainable, embedded resource within the organisation rather than just you know, a program that's funded for a particular period of time, because technology isn't going away. It's enabling everything that we're doing now. So I think it's very important that we do invest.
I just think to get us over the hump, essentially, in terms of actually getting these projects completed.
Yes.
That actually, you know, longer term, you want to make sure that the stuff that needs to be done can be done internally, but because of market conditions and because of the environment that we're currently in, actually thinking a little bit more outside the box in terms of actually using outside contractors just to get us over this hump, and then look at how we actually manage that within inside the organisation, and make sure that we get the transformation stuff complete that we need to get done anyway, might be something just to consider going forward, because for us, you know, I wouldn't speak for my colleagues, but I am going to a certain degree. You know, it seems like every time we have one of these meetings, you know, it is literally Groundhog Day, whereby we're being told the same thing and then, you know, going around in circles. I'm just thinking, actually, as much as we do need to protect budgets, actually going forward to actually make sure that we get the transformation complete, it might just be something that we need to sort of take a one-time hit on and then just get us over this hump and then go forward.
Yeah.
So,
well, I believe the development agreement that we have with Aura now, with the new contract, will take us over that hump.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's just a little bit further beyond that. What does that look like?
Sounds perfect, thank you.
Sorry to get too hung up on this development resource thing.
No problem.
But have we... Yeah, hung up on it now. Are we... Has the authority approached any of the universities for interns? Or,
we have, yeah. To no avail, unfortunately. Yeah, I think we did interview one person, and we've interviewed a number of people, but they've just not been suitable, unfortunately. They've either been overqualified or underqualified.
Okay. Yes, Ben. Yeah.
Just to clarify, obviously the comments that are made on this side are from the understanding that we know how difficult the job is at the moment. So, you know, for us, it's the ability to try and offer, not just offer scrutiny, but, you know, try and give encouragement that actually if you do need the resources, you know, we will do our best to try and from this side and from the board to actually make sure that you're in a position to be able to complete the work that you've been set, because I think, you know, sometimes it kind of feels like we're sort of asking you to sit down on, you know, after chopping off 2 or 3 legs on the chair. So for us, it's, you know, trying to make sure that we keep encouraging you and trying to get the stuff done.
Absolutely.
So that's just the position that I want to clarify. It's not a criticism, it's just a, you know, it's more frustration to try and get the, you know, what you need to get done and have the resources to do. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Right, okay. If there's no more questions, I think we're just noting that report. Okay, thanks very much then. Thank you. Right, so we'll move on then to item 9, the HMIC report. Pete, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, colleagues, good morning. This paper tabled to the committee is the familiar regular update in respect of progress against all activity related to inspection by His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, and is broadly split into 2 sections. One is the progress against the actions which are intended to address the 22 areas for improvement included in our last HMICFRS full inspection report, which was published in December 2021. And the second part, just to report to members forthcoming activity in respect of HMICFRS inspection. It is usual practice for us to table to the committee the last version of our inspection action plan, which was approved by the service leadership team. So we did prepare a version of that action plan which was considered at the March SLT meeting, but given the proximity of our next full inspection by HMICFRS, which I'll come on to shortly, the Chief Officer decided to commission an extraordinary review of that inspection action plan, such that when we receive our document request as part of the round 3 inspection, which is expected next month, we will be providing to them, ahead of the inspection, a completely revised and bang up to date version of the Inspection Action Plan. And for that reason, unusually, the Inspection Action Plan isn't appended, as it normally is, to this report. We're currently just completing that extraordinary review, and that will be going to the Service Leadership Team meeting next week, and therefore at the next meeting of this committee, or whatever its successor committee might look like, then we will return to that normal reporting to present progress against that Inspection Action Plan for members' scrutiny. The second part, which is from paragraph 5.3 onwards, just reports the forthcoming inspection activity by HMI, and things are now heating up towards the start of our round 3 full inspection. That will be undertaken by HMI over a 10-week period, and will concentrate on the familiar pillars of inspection against effectiveness, efficiency, and our people. That itself will include a number of elements. So in the lead up to the inspection activity, we will be having the usual familiar document request, completing a self-assessment, and also HMI will issue a staff survey to our people. And the inspection field work, so when inspectors will actually be on site interacting with our staff, that will be in weeks 4 and 6 in person, so that starts in the week commencing the 19th of June. And then there will be in week 7 some virtual interviews. So where the round 1 inspection was all physically on site, round 2 inspection, due to the restrictions from the COVID pandemic, that was all virtual, will now be moving to a hybrid model, welcoming the inspectors on site for 2 weeks out of the 10-week inspection, and virtually in 1 week of those 10. So we are making preparations now in terms of the timetabling, collecting documentation to meet the document request when we receive it next week, next month, and in terms of the self-assessment and the strategic briefing, we'll be starting preparations so that we can do that effectively when the time comes. The report also just notes for the record, a little bit old hat now, but the State of Fire and Rescue report, so that's the Chief Inspector's annual assessment of the state of the fire and rescue sector. That's being published back in January, and paragraph 5.7 just outlines the findings of that national report. And also of significance, starting at paragraph 5.8, is the recent publication of a spotlight report by HMI into values and culture in fire and rescue services. So that was a national report looking at the evidence collected from all English fire and rescue services during rounds 1 and 2 inspection, consolidating that together and reporting a thematic inspection, which included 35 recommendations, 20 of which are directed for local action at individual FRS level. So we have already undertaken an analysis of those recommendations, and of those 20 we are going to be incorporating those into our HMI Inspection Action Plan, such that we maintain the corporate focus on the timescales which HMI has set for meeting those recommendations, and all of our HMI related activity can be reported and scrutinised in one place. So members, with the absence of, for this particular case, this particular meeting of the Inspection Action Plan for the reasons that I've given, a shorter report, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Pete. Questions? Don.
Thanks, Pete, and thanks for the comprehensive report. I'm not going to make any comments on the particular report. I'm going to express a level of disappointment about the whole HMI CFRS process. At the conference, I queried with Andy Cook about the very, very bland, shall I say, inspectorate, all ex-people of the same type. And just the question that we had at the last paper around transformation, if we don't do things differently, we'll be stuck where we are. And until we get HMIC FRS actually inspecting in a way that is innovative and looking at change rather than just looking at numbers, we'll be stuck, won't we? I think this is the problem. And Inspector Cook said, oh, well, we tried to look outside for other inspectors. I'm not sure they tried very hard. And I just feel that the whole HMIC FRS is a statistical gathering process, but isn't doing anything in terms of helping fire and rescue services to do better things by getting thinking from other worlds. So it's not a criticism of it, but I just think the point is for me is that there's an awful lot of effort goes into this, an awful lot of time and money is spent, not just in Avon, but with the other 44 authorities. And from a value for money point of view from them, I think it's very, very little, because it's not helping us to deliver a future fire service. And I'm quite happy that's been minuted and passed to Mr. Cook if you want, and he can ring me back if he likes.
I'll just say that's probably not for me to reply to. Fair enough.
What we do is great. I really appreciate the work that's been done. I just think, it's not helping us to resolve the issues that Zoe raised in the previous paper. We can't do that. We can't do the future.
Okay, thank you very much. Good strong point, yeah. Anybody, any other points anyone wants to raise? No? So, okay, well, thank you for that, Keith. Maybe just make that report, yeah?
Yes,
Yeah.
just now, so
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
So we move on then to the capital programme, item 10. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So the first report that I'll present this morning is an update on the 2022-23 capital programme, and these figures are projected as at the end of February. So we're currently obviously working through what the March position will be. So overall, if you look at the table at Appendix 1, you can see that we are expecting £3.4 million to carry over into the next financial year, and when we presented the capital programme for approval, that was 3.6 million, so we're actually not very far away. The main differences are we will have slightly less carrying over for fleet because we have made another stage payment in this year, and we'll have slightly more carrying over into next year for our premises budget, because there have been obviously some delays around the start of the work on Bedminster because of approvals that were needed. But other than that, it does look as we expected when this was presented last time to both Fire Authority and this committee. So I'm happy to take any questions about that. Other than that, it's just for noting, obviously, in any discussion.
Thank you, yeah, it does all look very familiar. Don.
Yeah, thanks for that, Claire, and I think we've certainly improved in terms of capital project delivery over where we were about 3 or 4 years ago. I guess the concern I have in terms of cash is that the cash is worth a lot less than it was when we sold the HQ building. So we were planning to do Bath and Western and Avonmouth for a good proportion of that, and we're not going to achieve anywhere near that. So I guess in this capital programme, it would be useful to have some understanding moving forward, certainly not for this report, but I think perhaps for 6 months' time, in terms of the actual gross implications of inflation on the capital programme, because we ain't going to achieve what we want because the cash we've got in the bank is worth less in terms of purchasing power. So I do think we need to be a bit realistic about highlighting that. I mean, the actual report itself and the commentary, thank you very much, really detailed and just what we need, but I think it'd be useful to get to members some level of reality about where we are.
Yeah, I think it does mention inflation in the report, but it could go into more detail about that. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Any other points? No. Thank you. Can we just make that then? Yep.
Yes. Just review the report.
And then we move on to the revenue budget monitoring.
So again, these figures are as at our forecast at the end of February, and we are looking at a slight overspend at that point in time of around about 59k, and that's largely a result, obviously, of the additional pay awards that we've had to take into account for 2022-23. We have, however, had additional income, which has mitigated some of that for us, both from the SWAST agreement, which was extended for all of this year, and also because of our cash balances, we have actually had additional investment income, which we weren't expecting as part of the budget. We're looking at that being around about 300k for the entire year. We have had some other slight differences in terms of overspends and underspends across a number of different areas, but there's, sorry.
So Emma's trying to do the minutes.
So, I think we covered a bit about incomes, didn't we, and pay awards. So, what I was saying was there are some other slight variances in other areas. There are a number of different lines. But overall, we've balanced the budget to come in at what we would expect for 22-23. And as I said as well, we are now working through the March year-end position, and that is looking reflective of what we're forecasting in this report. So, there's not anything which has come out recently which will change the substance of these figures. So really, other than that, there wasn't anything I wanted to highlight, but obviously happy to answer any specific questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. Questions, anybody? Everyone happy?
Ben, you okay? Did you hear everything you needed to hear? So the additional income was from the SWAST agreement, which was extended with the ambulance service, and also additional investment income, which came collectively to 300k, was that right? Yeah. So I didn't know if you could hear that. Okay, all right.
Okay, great. So we'll note that report as well. Thank you very much, Claire. Thank you. And we move on to item 12, the Grenfell Tower inquiry. Danny.
Good morning again, everyone. So this report highlights our progress so far with in relation to the formal recommendations documented in the Grenfell Tower Inquiry Phase 1 report. The overall status remains unchanged, with 19 of the internal actions complete and a further 10 internal actions that are still in progress. A further review of progress and target completion dates has been completed, and all the remaining actions are within their target completion dates and progressing as we speak. This update will focus on the progress made by Avon Fire and Rescue Service since our last progress report on the 18th of January 2023, and it relates solely to the Phase 1 report. Phase 2 of the inquiry commenced on the 27th of January 2021 to examine the reasons for the Grenfell Tower incident. The inquiry closed in July of the same year. The panel are still preparing their report of findings and as yet have not published anything, but it is expected sometime this year. Financial implications. The total cost of the project is £99,229, and that's with £97,720.61 already allocated against specific grant funding. This leaves an amount to be allocated of £1,508.39. A summary of that can be found in the table under section 4. There were 29 internal actions documented in our action plan, which you can find in Appendix 1. And as I mentioned, of these 29, 19 are complete with 10 in progress. These can be found listed in Table 1 of the report. A summary of the progress and completion dates is shown also in Figure 1 as well as Table 1. Wider progress as we're moving forward with the 10 outstanding. A training package has been developed in line with the evacuation operational instruction note, and the evacuation packs for frontline appliances have been purchased. Evacuation training for all operational staff commenced mid-March this year and is anticipated to be completed by early May this year. I work with Bristol City Council to improve our site-specific risk information in relation to the high-rise residential buildings, and the computer-aided design plans is almost complete. There are currently still 2 Bristol City Council CAD plans outstanding. One is due to building being enveloped in scaffolding, and the other one is anticipated to be completed by the end of this month. The premises information plates, the design of them have been agreed, and work has started on the first 8 of Bristol City's high-rise residential buildings in the Barton Hill area. The ongoing target is to complete 5 per month by our Portishead team, who are also liaising with other unitaries as well as Unite Student Accommodation to start creating plans for their high-rise residential buildings. That concludes my report. I just ask if you'd note the report, and I'll now take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this is all going to be complete by the end of the year then? Yeah. Don?
Again, thanks for the report and thanks for what we're doing. I guess this is really in the news today, isn't it? Because there's a report that I think it's a Premier Inn right in James Barton roundabout may be repurposed into a 28-storey high block of flats. You consider the constrained nature of that site, having to deal with an incident there, which I think would be extremely challenging. So I guess this is massively important to us as a service to keep the residents, particularly of Bristol, where there are, and there are high-rise and all the other 3 authority areas as well. So the fact we can say we're doing this stuff, I think is really useful, but you know, the challenge will continue to be there, and it will continue to be worse, won't it, if we're going to have significant buildings of that height in Bristol.
It may be mitigated a bit, though, by the new legislation and the new process that will be introduced. So we'll be involved much earlier stage. At the moment, we're on catch-up, aren't we, trying to introduce CAD plans, but actually all the information should be provided earlier in the planning stages. So the Fire Safety Act should address some of those concerns. Yeah, of course.
It's not a question, it's just a comment. Just thank you for everything you are doing, because you know it is one of those cut-through issues. Unfortunately, everything that happened in Grenfell, people are a lot more aware of certainly high-rise buildings and the ability to, the ability for us to tackle them for a start, and secondly, the risk that does come from certainly being on these higher levels. So the work you are doing is incredibly important, and thank you. Not only from myself, I guess from everyone else on the board. We realise what you're doing, and we can only say thank you for doing it. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to note the progress.
Just note the report.
Yeah, note the report. Thank you very much, Danny. So that just leaves the date of the next meeting. Well, as things stand, we still have to have the date of the next meeting, which is the 27th of June, subject to any changes that might take place. And with that, I think we'll close the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for attending.